One of my heroes back in the 1840s was a man named Henry David Thoreau. He had a wonderful definition of success. He went to prison, this man, because he refused to pay his taxes to a government that was doing to the people who had been living on this land for 10,000 years and just removing them in the name of our right to do so because of a piece of legislation signed by President Andrew Jackson in 1830 called the Indian Removal Act. It gave anybody the legal right to just remove people who had a language and an educational system and a history of living there. They were just removed. And Thoreau was so anguished by this in Concord, Massachusetts, that he went to prison, refusing to pay his taxes. And his neighbor's name was Ralph Waldo Emerson. He lived 2 streets over and 7 houses down. Those of you who saw my last PBS special know that I recorded it right there in Concord. And Emerson came to the jail at Concord, and he said to Thoreau, he said, "What are you doing in there? We need you out here." He was beginning the Transcendentalist movement, some of the ideas of which I'll be speaking about here today and tomorrow. And Thoreau reportedly said to him, "Ralph, what are you doing out there?" And Emerson paid his bail, and rather than return to his home, he went to live deliberately in the land in a place called Walden Pond out in western Massachusetts. And he wrote an essay on the necessity of civil disobedience. And this is what his definition of success sounded like in that essay. He said, "If you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavors, and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." That's a really powerful definition of success. That you have things inside of you called dreams and endeavors, and if you live by them, rather than chasing after what it is that you think you would like to have, if you live by that connection to your source, because our thoughts is the way that God thinks through us. Our thoughts is how God thinks through us. And when our thoughts are in rapport with what it is that Spirit is like, everything that the source is capable of doing, you are capable of doing. The greatest teacher who ever came to this planet, who ever walked among us 2,000 years ago, reminded us, after performing miracles and converting water into wine and raising the dead and manifesting the gift of fish and loaves by just his thoughts, the power of his thoughts to attract into our lives whatever it is that he would think about. Such was the energy level at which this man lived, this being lived. He said, "Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things." It's in every one of us. Every one of us has this capacity to do it. And I stand up here knowing that this is true. See, I know because before I ever showed up here on this planet, I had a conversation with my source, with God. And God said, "What do you want to do this time around?" Because in an infinite world, you get an infinite number of chances at this. And I said, "I'd like to teach self-reliance." And God said, "You really want to teach self-reliance for a whole lifetime? It's all I've ever done, 62 years later. You sure you want to teach self-reliance?" I said, "Yes, that's exactly what I'd like to do." He said, "Well, then we better get your little ass into an orphanage. And you better spend a good 10 years there, and you better learn how to rely upon yourself. And once you know how to rely upon yourself, you'll be able to teach it. But if you're waiting for somebody else to teach it, or you're waiting for the right things to show up, and learning self-reliance was what's the great benefit. When people say it must have been a hard time for you as a child, I said, look, when you're 6 years old, you don't wake up every morning and say, oh my God, I'm an orphan again today. Why does this happen to me, not everybody else? You don't do that. You get up and you do whatever you do when you're 6. And then you turn 40 a week or two later. Seems like it, doesn't it? And then you look at your life and you say, oh my God, I got all of these problems, and my wife doesn't understand me, and my kids, they just think I'm a jerk, and I'm addicted to this, and I'm poor, and I don't have all these bills. Why is that? Someone said, why is your life so messed up? Well, what do you expect from me? I was an orphan, Or my mother liked my sister better. Or Sarah Lee made me fat, or something. That is back there in our past, we rely upon, when in fact, we are nothing more than the product of the choices that we make.